It's Mock Draft Monday, and the theme today is the super freaks that were at the NFL Combine. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of the Horseshoe Huddle, of HorseshoeHuddle.com, and my partner Jake Arthur is our credentialed boots on the ground, returning to his role. I'm no longer trying to take his job out there. We are back in our home states, or I'm back in my home state, rather. And it's time to do a little bit of fun mock draft Monday with the NFL Combine firmly behind us. And our theme today, because you guys know we like to do a bunch of themes with these mock drafts. That way we're not being stale and just doing, Tyler Warren in every single one, which I'm sure we'd all love to do. So our theme today is Combine Freaks. So me and Jake are limited a little bit today to players who we thought tested fantastically at the Combine. Now, we're not going to pigeonhole ourselves too much here and say that it has to be guys with like 9.99 RAS or anything. I mean, Jake might have a couple guys like that. But yeah, we're going to just go off of guys that really helped themselves at the week of the Combine. And we're going to do dueling mock drafts based off of that. So, Jake, we're going to kick it off with you because you have the freakiest of all freaks as your first round pick for the Colts. So in this mock draft Monday, based on Combine Super Freaks, who is your guy that you're taking at 14 for the Colts?
Yes, I'm going to preface this with saying I think all of us obviously hope for a little bit of change from the Colts front office this offseason, but it's not going to be wholesale. For me, I think it's more likely we see a change in a little more aggressive nature in free agency. But I think their knack for drafting those freaks rather than like safer guys who are already a little established, I think that's not going to change. And so with that, I'm going to get the star of stars from the Combine, and that's South Carolina safety Nick Emmanwori. You got a super freak here, guys. 6'3", 220, running under 4'4", hitting the rafters at Lucas Oil, 43-inch vert, over 11-foot broad. I mean, the guy is as advertised. But the thing is, you get these workout worries all the time, and a lot of them are defensive backs usually. You get these gigantic transformer-style guys, and they're all traits. They don't have the tape to back it up. His tape's not bad. Now, I don't know how much it transfers over to the Colts, but as we've seen before, they are willing to bet on the traits and think that they can coach a guy into it. So, whereas like a Malachi Starks, for my money, is the better fit, you're betting on a super high ceiling, like an Anthony Richardson style safety prospect here. And, maybe more Kyle Hamilton than Derwin James. Hamilton surely isn't the violent player that James is. So I think with Nick Emmanwori, you're still looking at a Pro Bowl, all-pro level safety projection. May take him a little while. Like with Hamilton with the Ravens was not that great early on, but we've seen his become a really, really good player. So I think that just fits the Colts so well. The only question now is, does he make it there? I saw Lance Zierlein's mock today, who is 13 to the Dolphins right in front of the Colts. So a guy like that may not make it to the Colts at 14.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting fit because we've seen like this style of defense utilize players like that in the past. I mean, heck, I would say the Baltimore Ravens are a very similar type of defense to what Lou Anarumo deploys, and Kyle Hamilton is obviously their ultimate chess piece. But we have seen limitations when they have to move him back to free safety and be like that pure free safety. Now, it's not a one-to-one comparison. These are different players, but that's my only fear with taking Emmanwori that high is, can he play free safety enough to where Nick Cross can be at his best around the box, or are you going to be stuck with two strong safeties on your defense? But Emmanwori, great project. I think he's a fantastic athlete, obviously, is what they've shown. And you know what? Maybe you can find a role for him just doing what, maybe he can be a linebacker for you. Maybe he can be a single high safety. Maybe you can get him some nickel corner snaps and put Kenny on the outside sometimes and be really diverse with it. I mean, Lou Anarumo is so diverse with his defense that giving him a player like this that he can just move around a lot could never hurt. So
Mhm.
Emin I wouldn't hate it if he was the pick at 14. My pick I'm going with at 14 is one that Colts fans would not love, but look, this guy probably won't even be there come draft day because of the
Yeah.
combine he just had, and that is Missouri offensive lineman Armand Membo. I did put him as offensive lineman on here instead of tackle because the Colts offensive line is in such a state of flux that we don't know if they're going to need a tackle, if they're going to need a guard, or what they're going to need this offseason. Either way, a player like Membo could be a fantastic fit for the Colts. I mean, just looking at his testing numbers, this was one of the freakiest combines we've ever seen. Honestly, I would put it up there with Emin Warry's style of combine because we're getting a 330-pound offensive lineman who had vines for arms, over 34 inches, despite only being 6'4", ran a 4.91 at that weight, which is bonkers. That is
Yeah.
absolutely bonkers. Jumped out of this world as well. Posted other great. Had 31 reps on the bench. I mean, his
With
field
the long
workouts were
arms.
great. Yeah, I mean, Membo, like we know on film, when you watch his film, this is a guy who can dominate in either gap or zone scheme. He can play guard or tackle. Sure, there's some technical, difficulties on his film. Like he's not the perfect technician, but like he's so athletic, he's so strong, he's so smooth that you can make this work at either position. I do think before the combine there was a chance he could have been there at 14. Now he probably is the first, maybe the second offensive lineman off the board. I would honestly bet on first at this point. He could probably go as early as number 4 to the Patriots, but in honor of this mock draft, if he were there at 14, I think he'd be a great pick for the Colts. I know O-line is not the sexy pick, but Chris Ballard loves the trenches. Membo is arguably the best offensive lineman in this draft, and if you could get him at 14, I think you just run that to the podium and solidify that offensive line for the next couple of years. Again, I don't care if you put him at guard or tackle. I think he's going to be pretty good either way. He might be a better guard, but I think
Mhm.
he's going to be pretty darn good either way.
Yeah, when you can get an athletic guy with that size, that's just a skosh off of tackle size there inside. Oftentimes it really works. And I got the benefit of talking to him there at the combine the other day, and he said he basically intimated he would like to play tackle, but if a team wanted him to play guard, he said let's go do it. He did say most teams seem to be leaning tackle with him,
Yeah.
and if he was 6'5", 6'6", I don't think we're really having much of the conversation because the rest of the stuff kind of checks out. But no, I think he's a ready-made player. I think he would fit in well with what the Colts have got going on. You put him in that young core with Tanner Bortolini, Matt Gonzalez, and you just got a young group of offensive linemen that could go play ball to go with Quentin Nelson and Bernard Ryman. So I really like that one. I'm really cool with just about any position in the first this year outside of like running back and receiver. If it's an offensive lineman, I'm cool. And again, this offensive line group, it's like who plays where. Like I just today when I had my positional rankings here, I eliminated tackles and interior guys. I just have an offensive line column now. So that's just the kind of year it is. And
Yeah.
like you said, we have no idea a week from now, 2 weeks from now, what the Colts offensive line is going to look like. Obviously, free agency starts next week. I mean, this guy can fill just about whatever they're going to need. I probably wouldn't put him at center just because he's going to be more valuable at guard or tackle, whatever they need. But yeah, I'm all in on that one. I like that one a lot. Plus, he seems to have a good head on his shoulders. Like I said, I got to talk to him. I was around for about 10 minutes there the other day. So it seems like he's got the right mentality.
Yeah, and anytime I can cheat and give like a top 5 to 6 or 7 prospect to the Colts at 14 for one of these mock draft Mondays, I feel pretty good about myself. So
Yeah.
Armand Membu is my pick at 14 in this mock draft Monday featuring Combine Freaks. Jake obviously went with the ultimate Combine Freak in Nick
Yeah.
Emenwari from South Carolina. But coming up, we have a pair of defensive backs coming to the Colts in our mock drafts that just put the Combine on blast this past week.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. Plus, if you're looking for a bigger payout, take everything, shove it together for a same-game parlay. For me, I like using FanDuel's live betting feature because when games get boring, which even some of the best games hit a lull, I kind of get spicy and I can think of what I think the next thing that's going to happen. I throw a bet out there. Sometimes I win. A lot of times I don't win. So when it feels like you missed your chance, go ahead and just try again. Plus, the app is easy to use. You get your money right away as well. Because if you win it, you deserve it. You should get it right away. A lot of apps, it feels like you have to wait forever. But right now, new FanDuel customers, you guys can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we're not Rick James, but we got some super freaks in that first round, Zach. And, it's not over. It's second round now. There was a lot to be had, and we still got some needs on the board. So why don't you go ahead and tell me who you have conjured up in the second round for the Colts?
Yeah, I think you and I are kind of twinning with these next two rounds here in our mock drafts because we went with the same position, just with different players in each round. So to kick us off here in round 2, I looked at the cornerback position, and much like you did as well, but I went with Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. Now, I'm a big Build-A-Ballard guy. Obviously, it's the series that I write every single offseason. And the Build-A-Ballard and even the Lou Anarumo type says that they like these 6-foot-plus corners that can turn and run, that can be that can operate in man coverage. And while Maxwell Hairston's maybe a little bit short and a little bit underweight, he is a feisty competitor who does not give up much ground in coverage. And the film's really good. I mean, unlike a lot of corners that get to round 2, you see these guys where it's like they're big project type players, and the film's not great, but the testing is great, or it's the other way around where the testing pushed them out of round 1, but the film is really good. For me, Hairston is a guy who kind of gives you great film and great testing, but he might only fall this far because of the size. Like, he is a little bit smaller. I see a lot to like on the film. He ran, low 4.3s at the combine as well.
I think.
Oh, 4.28. Sorry, 4.28. Had one of the fastest max speeds in NFL Combine history that since they've been doing this next gen stats, max speed on the 40s. So yeah, Hairston's not the perfect Build-A-Ballard, but to me, when I look at what this system is going to be with Lou Anarumo, where we're going to be in receivers' faces a lot, we're going to ask these corners to have to turn and run with wide receivers. And I look at this Colts roster where Jalen Jones and Sam Womack really aren't those type of guys. A guy like Maxwell Hairston can do that. He's not afraid to get up in a receiver's face. He'll give them a good punch, but he can turn and run with the best of them. I mean, again, that max speed, he could even turn and run with the Tyreek Hills of the world, where the Colts on this roster don't really have that guy. So in a division where we've seen Nico Collins burn every single corner on this team on the vertical ball, give me a guy like Maxwell Hairston who can not only be competitive with him at the line of scrimmage, but can also keep up with him and turn and run. So yeah, Hairston is a guy where, like, he's not a project. He's athletic. He's ready to go now. And he's a guy who helps your defense from day one.
Yeah, and this is a guy who I don't even know if he's going to be there at 45. Again, I saw him in the bottom of the first round, I think 31 or 32 today in a mock. But you look at him and you say, what's the big but? And there's nothing really damning. Like, the size, like, you do wish you would be 205, 6 foot, but like you said, he's kind of gritty. So even when a receiver is going to play physical with him, he's not going to really be bullied. He's at least going to try. He is quick. So let's just say someone gets a push off on him and gets a little separation. He is quick, but he has that long speed to recover as well if it's going vertical. So there's really not a whole lot not to like about him. I could see with the Colts, again, he's not the prototype, but he's got enough special traits to where I think he's the type of guy they would make an exception for. Yeah. And I was really surprised because I took the guy who I thought was going to be your guy. And this one's probably more likely to be available at 45, but Darian Porter from Iowa State. Now he's probably not as well-rounded. Plus he's newer to the position of cornerback than Hairston is, but he is the height, weight, speed guy. He was just a tick behind Hairston in the 40 as well. I think he was more around 4.3 if I remember. But yeah, he's physical, probably not quite as quick, but I think, he's long and physical, and that's the way he stays with guys, within the short to intermediate stuff, but he has that long speed as well. So with him, you're probably going to have to wait a little longer for his development. again, because this is a former wide receiver. It's not like he's really got everything down, all the techniques that Hairston's been working on for years necessarily. But if you want a guy who is a projection, but probably he's not like this multi-year guy you're never going to be able to start. Like he's not necessarily a pipe dream. I think you can get something out of him right now. But he's probably maybe not going to be a star yet. But yeah, Maxwell Hairston and Darian Porter are two guys who are kind of from the same vein here. One of them is just a bit more refined than the other and probably a little more plug and play at the moment.
Yeah, a guy like Harrison, I think you can get him out there from day one. He's going to be a good corner from day one, where Porter, you probably need to work with him a little bit, but still, if you have a specific plan for him where it's like, we're going to have you bump and run, pinch these guys to the sideline, and if they go vertical, like, yeah, you can stay on top of that. You're a freaky athlete. I think that can perfectly work. And look, the last time that the Colts and the rest of the NFL overthought an older prospect that was transitioning from wide receiver to corner that tested like this was Tariq Woolen, who was an all-pro like in his second season. So I'm not saying that Porter's going to be that good because Woolen is a fantastic cornerback, but I kind of get the similar vibes of sometimes you just overthink these things. I mean, this is a one-of-one freak, and I think he can be a pretty good player. Now, I'm a little concerned again with the age and the lack of experience on defense, but at the very least, like say round 2 is a little bit of a reach for him. If you take him in, say, round 3, you at least know you're going to get one of the best gunners and special teamers in football from day one, and then you can work with the athletic traits from there. I think there's much worse ways to spend a day 2 pick than a player who at his very worst is going to be a really good contributor for you in some way. Before we kick it to our next segment, though, I did want to shout out this comment from Jake Brigante in our comments. Siobhan Revel was built by Ballard. That's another guy I'm looking at. He didn't really fit today's theme of Combine Freaks because he didn't work out, but I'm sure he will be in some of our future mocks because if he falls to round 2, I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued with that height, weight, speed that he showed in college and the playmaking he showed in college. But yeah, as of right now, corner is definitely the theme in round 2, right, Jake?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that Revel one. And it's possible he gets passed up, small school, the ACL. So obviously these other guys from bigger schools can come in and kind of overtake his position in the first round a little bit. So that's a sneaky one, could be available there.
And look, we know the Colts love a good torn ACL or torn Achilles guy in the draft. We love
getting
the
them at a
guys.
discount. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I do certainly think that he could be a guy the Colts target. But yeah, Hairston, Porter, Revel. I'm sure we can name all 3 or 4 more corners. The goal of today is obviously getting a corner in round 2. But wait, guys, Jake and I have both ignored the biggest position of need, and that is tight end. So coming up, Jake and I are going to take our swings at some tight ends who we probably haven't talked about too much on the show at this point. But if we get to round 3 and the Colts don't have a tight end in the real draft, we're all going to be screaming. So here we go. Alrighty, Locked On Colts everydayers, we are back with this mock draft Monday featuring Combine Super Freaks. In the first round, Jake and I took probably the 2 biggest winners of the Combine. He took Nick Emmanwori, the safety from South Carolina. I took Armand Membo, the offensive lineman from Missouri. Then we both went to the cornerback position. Jake took Maxwell Hairston I took Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, and Jake took Darian Porter from Iowa State. I'm so used to taking Darian Porter myself that I gave him back to myself there. But now in round 3, we've come down to the Colts still don't have a tight end in our mock drafts. And if we're really ignoring free agency in this mock draft like we have in the first 2 segments, we need a tight end at this point. The Colts offense cannot operate without one like they did last year. So, Jake, which tight end have you gone with here in round 3 that, the top 3 guys that we've mentioned all draft season are probably off the board by this point?
Yeah. In any mock I do where I think, something's going to happen is Mason Taylor. And he did have a really strong combine, but I'm pretty sure I picked him last time. I had him in my post-Senior Bowl mock, so I'll keep it fresh on this one.
Look, our goal is to make sure that we pick as many different names, so then when the Colts actually draft a player, odds are we'll have talked about one of them at some point. That's for you guys right there.
We're attached to everything. That's right. No, so this guy is among the last of my tight ends that I'm really comfortable with being able to become like an every down starter. And he needs a little work, but it's Oregon's Terrence Ferguson. So he's got the height, he's got the length, very smooth mover. I think like his gauntlet drill in particular showed what he can do. But good field workout. This is just a good athlete. Had a good week out there at the Senior Bowl. I like the way he runs routes. I think he's really smooth with it. Where you look at like a certain tight end that's very polarizing, he kind of moves like the wardrobe from the Beauty and the Beast when they all become animated when the villagers come in. But no, this guy is a very smooth mover. It looks natural. He catches it very naturally. I think he is good blocking on the move. Like sitting him on the line is probably going to take a little time, but it looks like with his frame, he could add a little bit. Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, I really like him. And again, I would like the tight end position to be addressed a little more urgently than this, but he is on kind of my final tier of guys where I'm comfortable with this being like the investment that you make. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Ferguson would be a good investment in terms of like, we're going to get a guy who can help us as a pass catcher from day one. Now, does he help us live in 11 personnel? I think that's maybe the question that you got to ask yourself in the draft room. Like, does he show enough with his play strength, with his technique in the run game to where we can feel confident putting him in line? I think that's the conversation a team like the Colts would certainly have regarding him. And then kind of in that same vein, the guy that I have is like one of my last of that tier type of player is Nebraska tight end Thomas Fedone. Not really a big name that's being talked about as like a round 3 or like round 4 type guy, but I thought he tested very well, posted some outstanding agility, like a 4.7, I think, in the 40-yard, despite being a little bit bigger, like 245, I believe is what he came in at. So did some good things there, looked good in the field drills. I know the production wasn't there in college, but for tight end, I really do think you are looking at traits. I mean, one guy I always go back to back in the day was George Kittle, had like no production in college. He gets to the NFL, and from day one, he's a super producer at this next level. Now, I don't think Fedone is anything like George Kittle in that regard, but for tight end, I do think you want to scout the traits a little bit. You know, what these guys can do. Can they help us from day one in one regard, and can they grow from there? And I think Fedone, I mean, look, playing in the Big Ten or whatever the heck it was called this past season with the 400 teams in that conference, you learn how to block. You learn how to run block. I know technically Ferguson was in that conference too, but he was in the Pac-12 early on. It wasn't like the Big Ten. You know, at Nebraska, you're playing in the Big Ten. Yeah, whatever. You're playing in whatever Big Ten this was with Fedone. And yeah, he had to work in line. He had to be like a traditional NFL tight end. So I feel a little bit more comfortable with Fedone being that 11 personnel tight end for the Colts than I would like a guy like Ferguson, even if Ferguson offers more pass catching and maybe even more athletic upside, depending on how you really look at it there. But I do think these are like my last guys in that tier that I'd feel happy with taking and like maybe starting or giving a good role to next year, because after this, you get into like maybe Gadsden from Syracuse. I think he could be a pretty decent guy in there, but again, do you start him? You might have to go like swing back to free agency. Either way, like even if you do take one of these two guys in round 3. Actually, you know what, Jake? While we have a little time here, let me throw this at you. Does this mock draft that we're doing today kind of show why the Colts should maybe pursue like a trade for Michael Mayer from Vegas, so that if you want to take 2 athletic guys in round 1 and 2? You can still take a Fedone or Ferguson at round 3, but now you don't feel so bad about your tight end position because you have a guy like Mayer who can help you operate in 11 personnel.
Yeah, I was just going to say, while you were talking, that really got my wheels turned a bit. Getting guys like this, like Fedone and Ferguson, it obviously does not fix the position. That's with the caveat that you've done something in free agency or the trade market. And, if you gave up a 5th or 6th for Mayer or whatever, and now you're getting Ferguson or Fedone, great. It's not what it could have been, but I feel better about the tight end position. A guy like Mayer is a little well-rounded. These Fedone and Ferguson, again, Fedone a little better blocker. Ferguson got to work with him a little bit, but is the better pass catcher. You got a well-rounded group of guys who could probably get the job done better than what you've had. But no, I agree. It shows the importance of making a move like that in the free agent / trade market, or getting someone high, Loveland, Warren, Taylor, those 3 guys are like really important if you're going to strike out leading up to the draft. So I totally agree. And, on the subject of super freaks, we're really leaving out Robbie Oots.
The super
what are we doing?
Mustache is what it is right
Ootsy Daisy. Let's get in here.
I was looking
We're
at some.
talking God level tight ends. He's in there.
I was looking at some big board that had him jump up 50 spots after the combine. I'm like, oh, I know that he just saw just like what Jake saw at the
That's
combine.
purely on aesthetics alone.
That's what it was right there. I'm really hoping the Colts grab Oots just for Jake's man crush that he's got going on right now.
Bring back the fullback, bring back the H-back, find a role for this man. Just a locker room glue.
Yeah, locker room glue for you when you're in there with the media scrums after the games. That's what it is.
You
need
a goofy little guy to replace like Kylan Granson if he leaves in free agency, and there's your ticket right there.
There you go. But going back to the mock draft, I do think this shows the importance of not pigeonholing yourself by ignoring free agency. I don't know which GM I'm talking about when I say something like that, but this is a mock draft where Jake and I tried to avoid taking a tight end early. And this is kind of the result where we're going to be looking, like in this scenario, we'll be looking at the draft afterwards and be like, yeah, we got a Membo or we got Emenwari and our cornerback room looks better, but we still have nobody to catch the ball at tight end, or we still don't feel great about tight ends. So maybe this mock draft is kind of our way of showing you guys the Colts need to at least sign somebody decent at tight end. And then you could still take Tyler Warren at 14. You could still do that. But when you pigeonhole yourself and have a position that is so glaring of a need, you make it so you have to take it in round 1 or 2. Like right now, I'm looking at this mock draft and saying, I wish I took Tyler Warren or Loveland or Mason Taylor, because this is what the position the Colts are in right now. So I like Fedone. I like Ferguson. I would take them in round 3, 4, whatever it is. And if the Colts already had guys on the roster at tight end, but to draft them to be your starter next year, that would be a little bit scary right there.
Yeah, you got to hope in free agency that, the Jets, re-sign Conklin and grab Gesicki or something, and Juwan Johnson goes to Denver so they don't try to jump ahead of the Colts. And you got a couple tight end needy teams settled around you so that the Warrens and Lovelands of the world are more likely to be there for you.
Right. So you guys let us know what you think about all that. And what do you think of these mock drafts here? So mock draft Monday, with the theme being the super freaks at the combine. I went with Armand Membo in round 1, the offensive lineman out of Missouri. Then I came back with another SEC player, Kentucky cornerback Maxwell Hairston. And then I finished it off with Nebraska tight end Thomas Fedone. Jake went with Nick Emenwari, the safety out of South Carolina. Came back with Darian Porter, the corner from Iowa State in round 2. And then finished it off with Terrence Ferguson in round 3, the tight end from Oregon. So let us know what you think in the comment section of those, and do your own mock draft Monday. Throw them all in the comment section. Let us know what you got in your mock draft Monday. And we'll also keep you guys to the theme. Do some super freaks from the combine as well, because we know Chris Ballard is watching those super freaks when it comes to the combine. We do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today, though. And now for your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that insider scoop, follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram. Also subscribe on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.